Hello, and welcome to this year's Saskatchewan Science Centre Big Bang Show. My name is Jesse.
And I'm Jane.
And this year, because things are a little bit different than in years past, we're very happy to be able to bring you the Big Bang Show in a new and unique kind of way. This year, all of our experiments for our Big Bang Show are going to be bigger and better than something that we could normally offer at the Science Centre itself. This year, we've decided to bring our very best.
As we're bringing our very best this year, we're doing some really big experiments, which means that we're wearing some pretty intense little safety stuff. So we're gonna ask that you guys try not to do any of these things at home.
So with that in mind, we're ready to get going with what the topics of our Big Bang Show are this year. Our topics for our Big Bang Show this year are gonna be fire and cold. We're gonna start off by talking about fire.
Number 9.
Fire is something that's really important to understand. Every fire needs 3 things to be able to live. It needs to have heat, it needs to have oxygen, and it needs to have a source of fuel, something for it to burn up. So for example here, we have our candle. And if we're trying to have our candle be lit, it has oxygen there around it. The wax is going to be its own fuel, and it just needs a heat source to kind of get it going. So we'll take our barbecue lighter, and with that, we have our fire. Now, if you take any of those 3 things away from that fire, the fire will go out, which is something that's really important to know from a safety standpoint, because we need fires to not be able to just grow and become very, very big. Since we're doing a stage show that I think is a little bit more dangerous than usual, we're going to learn how to put this out using a fire extinguisher. Now, this fire extinguisher right here is a CO2 fire extinguisher. It's filled with carbon dioxide. When we point it at our flame and we squeeze the trigger, it's going to spray a whole bunch of CO2 out, and it's going to smother the fire, making it so it can't get that oxygen. Now, this year, I think we've got it pretty safe, but let's imagine, Jane, that this fire is huge and out of control, and we need to put it out, okay?
Got it, yes.
So Jane, I'm gonna take a step back here.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and we're gonna put out our fire in 3, 2, 1. Woo! Thank goodness there, Jane. So with that, we're able to take away the oxygen and we're able to put out our fire. Let's move on to our next experiment.
Number 8.
Alrighty guys, so our next experiment is gonna deal with specifically the fuel for a fire, okay? And one of the best fuels for a fire is actually alcohol. Now in this big jug right here, I have something called ethyl alcohol, and this is what's going to be our fuel today, okay? So we're gonna make what I like to call a whoosh bottle. When we're making this, all I'm gonna do is pour this into my big jug. What I'm doing right now is I am shaking up my jug and I'm mixing together the alcohol with the oxygen in here, okay? And when you mix a liquid in with the gas, it creates a vapor. So what we're gonna do today is we're actually gonna be lighting that vapor on fire instead of the alcohol itself. So now that we've got it all mixed up, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pour all of the extra alcohol out of here. Alrighty. I'm gonna go ahead and switch my gloves to something that's gonna keep me nice and safe for this experiment. And then we're gonna go ahead and try it out, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and try to light this. Okay, awesome. Now that we've got this lit, we're gonna go ahead and do it. We're gonna light it off in 3, 2, 1.
Number 7.
All right. So one of the most exciting things about New Year's is fireworks. Being able to see all the cool colors and the different designs. It's really fun to be able to see all those things kind of happen. One of my favorite things about fireworks is actually the chemistry behind it. Let's learn a little bit about it. For them to make all those different kinds of colors for those fireworks, they actually have to burn different chemicals. Every chemical is going to burn a little bit differently. One chemical might burn green, while another one might burn blue, or even red or pink. So we have some of those chemicals inside of these spray bottles here. We're going to start a small fire, and we're going to see what happens when we spray these chemicals into that fire.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and spray our first chemical. And this one burns a really pretty, bright, hot pink.
What chemical is that?
This one is actually called lithium chloride.
All right, we're going to add a little bit of our potassium. We get a nice bright orange, almost kind of like a pinky color.
I've got my last one over here. It's called strontium chloride. This guy is gonna make a nice, bright, orangey red color.
And our last one, we're going to spray some copper into there and get this nice green color.
Number 6.
All right, so for this next experiment, we're going to take things to the next level. Instead of lighting something else on fire, I'm actually going to be lighting my hands on fire. Now, this experiment is extremely dangerous, so please do not try this experiment at home. What we're going to do is, to help protect me, we're going to be getting my hands wet with some water. Jane's going to take our flammable gas. She's going to make some bubbles that are filled with that gas, and then we're going to light those bubbles on fire inside my hands. Let's do that right now. That's good. So Jane's going to take any extra bubbles off of my hands just to help give us a little bit more protection. And we are ready. Jane, you ready?
You bet.
All right, in 3, 2, 1. All right. So my hands are actually completely unharmed. And the reason for that is because the water will help protect them from any of the heat that comes off of them.
Number 5.
Alrighty guys, so for our next experiment, we're gonna do something a little bit closer to home, a little bit closer to our history here in Saskatchewan. Now I'm hoping that some of you will recognize this little structure here. This is our nice little model grain elevator. So you should be able to find these all over Saskatchewan. These guys are used to store grain as soon as they're harvested and before they're sent out to people, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're going to try our very best to blow it up. Now, why would we try blowing up a grain elevator in the first place, right? This actually happened quite often at one point. Our grain elevators have a history of exploding. So this happens because we have a lot of grain dust inside of them. And when a wind kicks up, it kicks all of this dust into the air and mixes it around. Now, if you imagine an old farmer walking around, if he tosses a cigarette or a lit match over his shoulder, he can actually ignite the dust that's in the air. So we're gonna try and do that ourselves today with our little model, okay? So we're gonna lift the lid on this thing. So we've got our little candle here and we've also got the fuel for our fire. This is called lycopodium powder and it's going to act as our grain dust today. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to go ahead and light this candle. And then we're gonna put the top of our grain elevator just back on top like this. Now, nothing's really happening so far. So what I'm going to get to do is he is going to blow air through this clear tube here, and he's gonna make our fireball happen. I'm gonna go ahead and take a nice step back, and on my count,
You should take another one.
and I'm gonna take another big step back. Okay, ready? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do it in 3, 2, 1. That's pretty good. Alrighty, awesome.
Number 4.
All right, so for our next experiment, we've been talking a lot about fire, but let's talk about one of the things that's important to fire, and that's oxygen. We do have oxygen in the air around us, but we can also make oxygen by a variety of different means. One of the ways that we can make oxygen is by taking a chemical that has oxygen in it and taking the oxygen out of it. For example, hydrogen peroxide You know, that stuff that bubbles up when you get a cut? That same stuff actually gives off oxygen gas. If you just let it sit over time, it separates into water and oxygen. But that's kind of boring. We don't want to just sit and watch something kind of slowly happen. We want like big, exciting experiments. So inside of this flask, we have a whole bunch of 35% hydrogen peroxide. This is way stronger than what you would find at a pharmacy. It's also mixed with a little bit of dish soap. Inside of this beaker, we have a catalyst. And what a catalyst does is it speeds up a reaction. This catalyst is called potassium iodide. And what it'll do is it'll take the oxygen out of the hydrogen peroxide very, very quickly. We're going to mix these two things together and see what happens. So in 3, 2, 1. So when we mix these two chemicals, we do start to make that oxygen gas. We also make all this foam. And as you guys can kind of see coming off of here, we make a lot of steam. This is a very exothermic reaction, which means it gives off lots and lots of that heat and oxygen.
Number 3.
Alrighty guys, so for our next experiment, we're gonna switch it up a little bit. No more heat, no more fire. We're gonna choose some different chemicals. What we're gonna do is we're gonna light off our very own rocket. This rocket is gonna be powered by just a little film canister full of water and a nice little piece of an Alka-Seltzer tablet. If you guys haven't seen these before, when they touch water, they start to fizz and bubble, okay? So when we drop this in there, it's gonna start to fizz and bubble. When I close up the cap, all of that gas that's escaping, carbon dioxide, the same stuff that you breathe out, is gonna start to build up inside of our film canister. Eventually the pressure is gonna get so big that our rocket is going to launch off. So we're gonna go ahead and try it out now, okay? Drop that in, seal it up, give it a really good shake, and see what happens. Okay, that scared me a little bit, but it worked. So our film canister went rocketing upwards. And it's kind of cool when we do it in a little tiny version like that. But I thought it would be way cooler to make a way bigger experiment out of this. So my table right here has about 1,500 of these film canister rockets on the bottom down here. And when we flip it over, all of these guys are gonna shoot off at once. So I'm gonna get some friends to come and help me out with this experiment here. And they're gonna help me flip it over, and we're gonna see what happens when we light off a whole bunch of them at once. Alrighty guys, so we flipped it over. That pressure is building, that carbon dioxide is being released. We're just gonna wait and see what happens. Oh, there we go.
Number 2.
Alrighty guys, so we're starting to finish up here. For our last few experiments, we're gonna be using the same chemical, and that is liquid nitrogen. If you guys have been to the Science Center before, you might have seen us play with this, and if not, then you're gonna get your opportunity to today. Inside of this really big container is liquid nitrogen. This chemical boils at minus 196 degrees Celsius, which is almost 200 degrees below zero. So it's really, really cold. I don't know if you guys can see, but we've switched out some of our protective gear to make sure that we stay nice and safe during this experiment and protect us from that cold, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and create our own geyser today. So we're gonna combine something really, really cold with something really, really hot. So we've got our liquid nitrogen for our cold ingredient, and for our hot ingredient, we've got a nice little bucket of boiling water. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. So when we combine these two, it's gonna have about a 300-degree difference. We are gonna go ahead and we are going to pour our liquid nitrogen. I'm gonna go ahead and put my little face shield down to stay nice and safe. Alrighty guys, so we have got our liquid nitrogen in there, and I'm going to go ahead and toss my hot water in there, all right? Okay, so we are gonna go ahead and do this in 3, 2, 1. That's pretty good.
Number 1.
All right, everyone, that brings us to our last experiment for our Big Bang show this year. And we're gonna make sure that we end with a really good bang. We've been using liquid nitrogen. We used it for that plume a second ago, but we're also gonna be able to use it to do a really cool kind of experiment. Inside this bottle, we currently have air. And instead, we're going to fill it with liquid nitrogen. When we fill it with liquid nitrogen, it's gonna start to expand. As that gas expands, it's gonna have nowhere to go, and it's gonna blow up this bottle. What we're gonna do is, before it blows up, we're gonna place it in this bucket, we're gonna throw some balls on top of it, and we're gonna see that explosion as our Big Bang. Make sure you count down with us. We'll get our team in here for this experiment. Go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, that was absolutely awesome. From all of us here at the Saskatchewan Science Center, we want to thank you for joining our Big Bang show this New Year's Eve, and we're very excited to see all of you in 2021. Stay safe and stay curious, fellow scientists.